On today's podcast, we're going international for the first time. Welcome, Sanela Lukanovic.
We are doing everything that we can in order to avoid failure and to avoid judgment and criticism of others.
Sanela, you describe yourself as a transformational leadership and life coach.
I'm only a leader if people are willing to follow me. Otherwise, you become a leader who makes things happen through the sheer force.
Specializing in empowering women leaders to live and lead with courage, authenticity, and purpose.
It's driven by fear of this judgment and criticism and failure rather than the passion for growth.
You're listening to Intentionality with Paul Kempff. Very warm welcome to our next guest for an interview today. Welcome, Sanela Lukanovic. I hope I got that surname right, Sanela.
Amazingly, as if you were a native Bosnian.
Fantastic. So why do I say we're going truly international today? Sanela is actually joining us online from the UK. So I must tell you, it's incredibly exciting for me to be doing this interview with Sanela because Sanela, you discovered us in the UK.
Yeah.
And I think I want to start off today's episode by just asking you, how did you discover us? How did you come across Intentionality with Paul Kempff?
Spotify.
Okay.
Yeah, so I love what you're describing there, how you do something brave and something that matters to you in those small steps.
Wonderful. Sanela, you describe yourself as a transformational leadership and life coach, specializing in empowering women leaders to live and lead with courage, authenticity, and purpose. I love those words. Maybe you can just expand on that a little bit and tell us what you mean by that.
So transformational coaching is essentially saying that I work with a person, not the problem. When we shift things internally, whether that's our beliefs or our perception of the world, then things shift sustainably. They shift forever. And then courage, compassion, purpose, that courage is the center of everything that I do. So it's all about how can we access that? And courage is something that you can learn. It's a set of skill set that we can learn, but also there is stuff that we need to do internally in order to allow ourselves or to give ourselves a chance to access that. So that is what my work is centered around. I kind of say I love working with people daring and wholehearted leaders. For me, it's really important to work with wholehearted leaders who are connected with their intention, with their purpose, who want to do good in the world.
That's awesome. You've used the word courage a lot of times already. And one of the things you and I spoke about that we could maybe explore a little bit further today is around courageous conversations. What does a courageous conversation look like to you? Why do you believe there's an art to courageous conversations?
Courageous conversations is when we make a decision to talk about things that matter rather than tapping out or pretending that things are not there. Okay. So every time we choose this, vulnerability to enter conversations that are important. I say can we talk about things that matter? That is a courageous conversation. And what I find through my work that we don't do enough of that. We rather, so the opposite of courageous conversations, what do we do instead? Instead, we internally, personally, we pretend that we don't care. We convince ourselves that things don't matter when they do. We build resentment. So every time we don't speak about things that matter, we put them, we put them under the carpet. And at the beginning, sort of like, when you put one thing under the carpet, okay, not a big thing, I can step over it. I don't even notice it. But if you do that continuously, especially in work environment, in relation, it doesn't really matter, wherever the relationship with people, if I don't have this courageous, if I don't enter this vulnerability and this uncertainty and, straight away and have that conversation with you, then I'm going to be resentful of you. And if that goes on, I'll be like, oh, well, I'm never going to, I don't want to work with you again. So instead of having those conversations, we become resentful, we deny things. And then the worst thing that then we do, we talk about it with other people. So the most toxic thing in any environment, especially in teams and organizations, even with our families, is when we gossip about what we don't like. We complain and gossip, and that then erodes trust. Then all sorts of things happen when we don't have those courageous conversations.
I think that a courageous conversation becomes an art when you are able to have a difficult conversation with somebody, but you are able to do it in such a way that it doesn't create resentment. Would you agree that's the kind of thing you're talking about?
Yes. It's when we dare to enter those conversations, we do it for the sake of connection and for the sake of avoiding resentment, because resentment blocks connection. And I love that you're picking up on the art of it. The art is to come into conversation having done your thing. So a conscious leader, an intentional leader, will come into conversation being able to own their, we say 100% of how have I contributed to this situation. In order to be in that, we call that being above the line, being in fully, you fully processed your side of things, what you think about it, what has happened. You are able to come into it with an intention, clear intention. What is it that you want this conversation to be? What is the outcome that you want to have? And that outcome is held likely. It's not like, I want you to change your mind. That's not an outcome. That's not coming into a conversation, courageous conversation. It could be a conversation, but that's not a courageous conversation. You have an intention for the outcome. I have an intention of how I want you to feel.
I love it. Somewhere in this room, there's a book that I read a couple of years ago. It's called Crucial Conversations. For the moment, I cannot remember who wrote it, but I feel like you've already got the topic of your own book. And I think it's going to be a very interesting book, The Art of Courageous Conversations. Have you ever thought about writing a book?
I love that. Yes, and what I'm really passionate about as well. I love this invitation. I love the invitation. At the moment, I'm kind of doing something a little bit different to a book. I'm creating a course on perfectionism, because perfectionism is something that blocks courage. But yeah, I'm gonna ponder on that. Courageous conversation. I'm super passionate about having conversations instead of building resentment, and I practice that. So maybe this is the seed. So when it comes on the shelves, I'll be mentioning you in this podcast.
So let's throw a challenge out to each other here. You write a book on the art of courageous conversations, and I have to write a book on intentionality somewhere in my future. Sanela, you've mentioned perfectionism there, and I would love to have a quick discussion with you around perfectionism. In our preparation, we specifically spoke about perfectionism, and I loved something that you said, and that is that perfectionism can get in the way of great leadership. Now, I consider myself a perfectionist. It makes me a poor delegator at work. It makes me want to shoot over my episodes that I've done of IWPK in the past maybe I can learn something from you about how to become a better leader despite my perfectionism. Tell me a little bit more about this idea of perfectionism getting in our way.
Well, first of all, I want to say that you're in good company. I refer to myself as a recovering perfectionist, and I'm yet to work with a leader who doesn't have perfectionist tendencies. So perfectionism, if kind of in a simple terms, if you want to think about it, it's the opposite of growth mindset. So perfectionist mindset is the opposite of growth mindset. Perfectionist, when we have that mindset on, we are doing everything that we can in order to avoid failure and to avoid judgment and criticism of others. So we are, when we have that on, we are externally driven. We are kind of thinking, how will the world perceive this, what I'm doing? And if there is any danger that they will not perceive us in a way that we want to be perceived, then this perfectionism comes up. And it kind of, it's driven by fear of this judgment and criticism and failure rather than the passion for growth. You know, you have to let go of perfectionism if you want to access courage. And was like, okay, didn't see that coming. So I don't know, but maybe you ask me some questions, because I can go in all sorts of directions with perfectionism. It's something that I've lived and worked really hard to overcome, or I'm working. Let me make sure that's clear. Every day I make choices that take me away from perfectionism and more into growth mindset.
Intentional choices.
Intentional, 100% intentional. You're absolutely right.
Sanela, I love the way that you've linked the idea of perfectionism and the idea of courage that we spoke about previously here. Maybe we can just wrap up this conversation around perfectionism with a few bullet points as to how perfectionism affects leadership.
Yes. So essentially, it stops us or makes it really hard for us to delegate, to prioritize. We exert too much control over, and it's okay when it's just us, but it's very hard and demotivating when we start controlling other people. We can tend to micromanagement. There is a sense of never enough. So when a team achieves a success, it's very hard to celebrate. And then also it's for us individually, we struggle to rest because we are constantly thinking from that space, it's not enough. What more can I do?
Absolutely love it. There's one more topic around leadership that I want to briefly explore with you, and that is the effect, or not the effect. Let's say the relationship or the role of empathy in leadership. Why do you think empathy is so important in leadership?
Empathy is the essence of connection. It's our ticket for connection. If you are thinking about building trust, building loyalty with people, you need to have moments where they can be seen, and empathy gives us that. So empathy, what it looks like is that I am letting go of my judgment, and I am connecting with what you are experiencing, with the emotions that you are experiencing, without wanting to, problem solve, without wanting to ignore it, without wanting to maybe sympathize with you, or talk about myself, or kind of convince you that it's not so bad. It's just a moment where we can connect with what is, on a human level, right? So that is what that what empathy looks like. And why is it important in leadership? Because at the beginning of our, when we are experts in our field, we are building trust with people through our reliability and credibility. But when we go further, we have two other elements of trust that we need to harness that gives us more trust and more connection with our clients, with our people, with our peers. And that is the sense of intimacy, and that where you need empathy and shared agenda. You need empathy for that. So it's essential that we create environments where we can listen and meet each other where we are without needing to problem solve. And definitely what I find with lots of leaders, without feeling a sense, now that I share that with you, I have to take it off your plate and I have to do something about it. I don't know if that resonates with you. Empathy is not about that. Empathy is like, I can sit with you in this moment and allow you to express whatever is coming up for you. It's a kind of courageous conversation, this uncertainty, this vulnerability of the moment. And a lot of people just kind of want to push through, like, okay, so, how about this? And, can we sign that? And I have done this and I have done that. And in the meantime, you have a person who is just not there. And a moment of connection would be, oh, Paul, I see you're not yourself this morning. Is everything all right? And you may choose to say, well, I've got a bad news about this, or this is on my mind. And that's a moment where that empathy allows me to connect with you. And that could lead to a deeper connection and deeper trust. But we are so scared to let go of our agendas. And we are so scared of actually entering that space, because I don't know, like, God forbid, you may say that, I don't know, you had a fight with your wife, and what do I do with that? Because we are constantly, we are so programmed to, like, if you share something with me, I now have to call your wife and see, like, can I sort that out for you? Right?
Yeah.
But that is not what empathy is. Empathy is really, can I sit with you and then give you the power and choice to decide, is there anything you need? Can I be of help? And I may not be, but what do you need? So it's a really beautiful moment of human connection.
I love the way you bring everything together. We're speaking about empathy now, but it goes directly back to the courageous conversation and how important empathy is in a courageous conversation to create a safe space for difficult conversations, to avoid resentment. I'm just for a moment going to be a little bit vulnerable here, and I'm going to say that empathy for me as a leader in our organization is really one of the most difficult things. My personality is a problem solver. It's let's look at the problem, let's try and solve the problem, and it's something that I think often comes across as not doing it with enough empathy.
Love that. I appreciate your vulnerability, and I appreciate your wrestling with this. And that is the first step to any change, just being mindful that is happening. So that's really beautiful. The first thing to disentangle there is that it is who you are. Okay, so this is like, it's a personality trait. It's not a personality. Being a problem solver is something that it's a skill, like you over-index on that skill. And that skill of being a problem solver has led you to where you are now, and has created, it made you successful. Now, when we are bringing empathy into it, we are not letting go of this problem solver. We are not letting, we are not making him redundant. That side of you, that skill set has to remain. You're going to need it again. Empathy essentially, what you also said there, like, you want to charge ahead, and there are people here who are experiencing world differently to you. And what you are saying, like, if I am a leader, I'm only a leader if people are willing to follow me. Otherwise, you become a leader who makes things happen through the sheer force of their personality, or will or capability or whatever. But you're kind of, leading with and leaving people behind. So what I'm hearing, and then I hear this in my coaching practice a lot, is like, I want to be a leader who people follow, and I want to create, we kind of need to walk together. You are setting the intention, you are setting the sort of vision, and at the same time, you have to accept that, kind of sit with where people are. So the again, I'm not gonna speak for you, but I'm gonna generalize a little bit in terms of what stops us from being in that space, and that's vulnerability. It is really vulnerable to sit and listen for other people, because problem solving is very concrete. It's in your control. That's the key thing. Like, you can control, like, I can think, I can execute, I can make this disappear. But what is required, what builds real trust and what makes people being seen and heard, is just to say, so I see that something is not working for you. Tell me more about it. What's going on for you here? What is, my favorite thing is, tell me more.
Yeah. I love it. I feel like I'm getting a coaching session and a marriage guidance session for free here today. So thank you for that. So I want to maybe just end off with one or two standard things that we always do. The first is just to check in with you. Is there anything you do in your life quickly, intentionally, every single day that helps you to be successful? Anything you can think of?
Yeah, currently it's exercise and walking that creates mental space and grounds me.
Love it. It's something I've spoken about a lot in the past on Intentionality with Paul Kempff. And then finally, it's something I do in every single episode. I leave the viewers and listeners with a tip of the week, a recommendation, anything. It could be a book, could be a podcast, could even be just a quote that you've heard somewhere that has resonated with you. And I love it when my guests do the tip of the week. Any chance you have a tip of the week for us?
Do one thing at a time. Stop, not multitask. Do one thing and choose one thing that when you look back at your week will make you proud of that week. So choose one thing that matters and do that only. Do not multitask.
So now that's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I'm certain that a lot of people out there will take this to heart and find a lot of value in this very real tip that you have given us. That's it for this week's episode, Sanela. It was a lot of fun spending this time with you. Really appreciate your time. I hope we can do this again somewhere in the future.
That would be a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Sanela. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching Intentionality with Paul Kempff. Subscribe, like, and click that bell to get notified when we release more episodes on how to live a life of intention and purpose.